Good evening. I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting to order. Madam Clerk, could you actually start with a roll call? And would Commissioner Gabbard please join us or lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And will the Planning Commission Secretary please do a roll call?
Please let the record show that all planning commissioners are present with exception of Commissioner Murphy, who is absent.
Great, thank you. That moves us to item A, which is approval of the minutes from our April 26th Planning Commission meeting.
I'll move to approve.
It's a motion by Commissioner Opal.
I just have one comment. The approval of the prior minutes from April 12th, it says 3-2. Shouldn't it be 3-1-1?
I can't remember back that far.
That's correct.
So,
Make that change?
yeah, if we could make that change.
Can you, Commissioner Opal, are you okay with that substitute motion?
Yes, I am.
All right. Great. Let's go ahead and vote. All right, great. Thank you. That moves us on to item B, which is public comments. Do we have anybody here other than, we have one speaker for an item that's on the agenda? No other
Chair Nelson.
speakers? Okay, so we'll bypass that, which moves us to item C, which is our consent calendar items. We do not have any consent calendar items, which moves us into public hearings, item D. And lost my track of space here. First item on that is Coastal Development Permit CDP 19-0014, which is authorizing the demolition of an existing single-family dwelling and the construction of a new two-story family dwelling with 2 attached garages on a coastal bluff lot, with minor site development permit SDP 19-0023M, requested to measure building height from not more than 30 inches of fill to achieve positive drainage to the street located at 35491 Camino Capistrano. Do we have a staff report tonight?
We do. Senior Planner Danny Giametti provided a staff report.
Thank you, Brenda. Good evening, Chair Nelson, fellow commissioners. The project before you this evening is a request to allow the demolition of an existing single-family dwelling and the construction of a new 2-story single-family dwelling with 2 attached garages on a coastal bluff. There's also a minor site development permit that's been requested in order to measure building height from not more than 30 inches of fill in order to achieve positive drainage to the street of Camino Capistrano. So this is the site. This is it's a coastal bluff lot located in Capo Beach. It's about 17,900 square feet approximately. It's bordered by similar residentially developed coastal bluff lots, and then there's 2 adjacent bluff lots to the north of the subject property here and here. Those were recently approved, have approved entitlements, and are currently under construction or just finishing construction. The lot itself is zoned RSF3, and it's located in the city's Coastal Commission's appealable area of the Coastal Overlay District, and also within 50 feet of a coastal bluff. So this is the existing conditions on site. As it exists, there's a non-conforming single-story dwelling. It's 2,544 square feet. As I said, it's a single-family dwelling, and it has an attached 2-car garage. There's also a pool and spa that are located within the interior courtyard of the single-family dwelling that's shown in that center slide here. And then there's landscaping and hardscaping scattered throughout the site. So the original home, garage, pool, and spa were all constructed in the 1950s prior to cityhood and the California Coastal Act, with the County of Orange and the city approving various deferred maintenance type permits through the 80s and 90s. The rear portion of the existing structure is constructed on what is now defined as a coastal bluff face under the city's Certified Local Coastal Program, which was originally cut during grading operations and improved with retaining walls to accommodate the lower of the existing dwelling. With the implementation of the Coastal Act through the city's local coastal program, the existing portions of the single-family dwelling and the related improvements located on the coastal bluff face and the coastal bluff edge setback are prohibited and are now non-conforming. And those are the areas here that are located beyond the coastal bluff and within the coastal bluff edge setback, obviously here. So the site, as I said earlier, is located within both the city's coastal overlay district and the appeals jurisdiction of the Coastal Commission. And due to the scope of the proposed project and the site's location on the coastal bluff in the coastal appeals jurisdiction of the California Coastal Commission, a coastal development permit is required. Additionally, a minor site development permit is required to measure the new building height from not more than 30 inches of fill in order to achieve positive drainage to the street. So this is the site plan. The project proposes the demolition of the existing non-conforming single-family dwelling and the garage, and the construction of the new two-story, 9,000 square foot single-family dwelling with 2 attached garages with a total of 1,131 square feet for the garages. There's also the construction of a new pool and spa and associated hardscape and landscape improvements. All improvements are considered coastal development pursuant to the Dana Point Zoning Code section, and therefore the project requires a coastal development permit. The project also proposes the use of not more than 30 inches of fill dirt in order to create a building pad which accommodates positive drainage flow away from the coastal bluff and out towards Camino Capistrano. The line here in red, this is the 25-foot bluff edge setback. The green line here is the line of the where the buildable footprint part starts. Everything beyond that, this is all within the buildable footprint. So this is your deviation, and this is, your coastal bluff edge. So this is an image of the proposed home overlaid over the existing footprint of the home. This black line indicates that it's moving backwards towards the street, away from the bluff face. As you can see, it's significantly set back from the bluff edge, and it's located outside of the required 25-foot bluff edge setback. And then the coastal bluff edge setback is established on the city's adopted zoning map and the draft Dana Point General Plan Coastal Erosion Technical Report dated in 1990. As identified in the zoning map, the subject site is an area requiring a 40-foot coastal bluff edge setback, and that's shown on that red line there. And then a deviation from the setback to 25 feet is permitted in accordance with the Dana Point Zoning Code requirements, subject to the review and approval of a geotechnical and soils report explaining the proposed deviation. And that deviation, the 25-foot, is located there in green. Justification was provided on the site-specific geotechnical report based on bluff stability calculations and coupled with the assessment of the 50-year bluff erosion of the site, which is the line shown in blue. And the report also recommends a conventional spread shallow foundation system of footings, and footings. The city's geotechnical engineer has reviewed the provided geotechnical report and concurred that both the requested setback deviation from 40 to 25 feet and the foundation system with conventional footings are appropriate for the site and consistent with the city's LCP, local coastal program. This is a rendering of the site as well as the landscaping. Obviously the front of the house, and then this is the interior looking out to the pool and the spa on the lower floor. Down here you have your landscaping plan. The area in blue is the proposed pool and spa that is located beyond within the buildable footprint and beyond the required 25-foot bluff edge setback deviation. The structure itself is proposed with a flat roof at a total height of 23 feet 9 inches. For a flat roof, the maximum allowable is 24 feet. As I said, with structures with a roof pitch of 0 all the way up to 3/12. The commencement of building height is measured from the top of the allowable fill credit, which I'll discuss in later slides. And the exterior proposes a modern architectural style. There's a combination of white and dark smooth stucco, exterior walls, stone veneer, metal louvers, and metal fascia and overhangs. The openings, such as the windows, the doors, and the garage, are frameless. And the garage door has a panel. It's like a panel roll-up type style garage door in black here. Exterior site improvements include a proposed pool and spa, as I said, located back here at the back of the house. As I said, this is located landward of the coastal bluff and the bluff edge setback. And there's additionally exterior improvements associated with the courtyard and associated entry wall and gate up here. Landscape planters, assorted pavers, and a variety of drought-tolerant landscaping shown on the bottom right here. that's also included as part of the project on the subject site and within the right-of-way along Camino Capistrano here. As I said, there's no improvements located within the coastal bluff edge setback that required 25-foot bluff edge setback. So additionally, the project includes the removal of an existing pre-coastal act improvements, hardscaping, and minor restorative correctional recontouring to return areas of the bluff face and bluff edge setback to pre-developed natural condition. That's that area highlighted in red here. So again, there's some existing improvements out here. The existing structure of the home went out beyond that area here, and there were some structural components that also are going to be removed that are located within the bluff or on the bluff face and within the bluff edge setback. So the resulting recontoured bluff face would facilitate a more natural appearance to the coastal bluff. As you can see, it follows the existing topography that's beyond that area here and just continues around. The demolished improvements, well, like I said, removing those demolished improvements will also return it to a more natural visual appearance. Once recontoured, the only minor development consistent with the city's provisions on development adjacent to coastal bluffs is permitted, and the defined coastal bluff edge and the approved 25-foot within the bluff edge and the bluff edge setback. So from here on out, and once it's approved, anything in the future would only be within the bluff edge setback would be limited to minor development that doesn't require a permit. That would have to be reviewed prior to issuance of any permits or any development. With the exception of the proposed minor site development permit request for the fill credit, which I'll discuss in the next slide, the project complies with all applicable development standards, including yard setbacks, the coastal bluff edge setback, lot coverage, and building height. So this is the fill credit that's proposed. The residential building height of the Dana Point zoning code permits residential building height to be measured from a top of not more than 30 inches of fill in order to create positive drainage flow out to the street. The current site conditions, as they stand now, allow runoff from the existing structure and impervious improvements to sheet flow towards the coastal bluff and down the face of the bluff. And it also allows irrigation to penetrate into the subsurface soils of the bluff. Because the existing site drainage conditions allow runoff to flow towards the bluff face, the maximum allowable 30 inches of compacted fill dirt is proposed to be placed along the most seaward rear portion of the proposed building and within the footprint of the proposed dwelling in order to assist facilitating positive site drainage flow to the street. So that fill credit, as I said, it's shown here on this section through, as well as on the section from the grading plan. This is the fill located within the buildable, on the building pad itself. So from the existing grade at 124.11, the 30 inches of fill credit brings it to 127 feet 5 inches. And from that point, the building height can commence at a maximum of 24 feet. The building height is 23 feet 9 inches as measured from the top of the fill for a total height or total vertical elevation of 151 feet 2 inches. The applicant has illustrated the proposed site drainage on the preliminary grading plan and addressed the fill in the geotechnical report and accounted for the use of the fill on the architectural drawings, demonstrating compliance with the measurement of the building height of the proposed single-family dwelling. And the requested fill credit's been reviewed by the Engineering and Public Works Department, and they've agreed that the proposed fill is at the maximum height, grade, and yardage necessary to correct the existing drainage problem and create positive drainage to the street. So with that said, staff finds the proposed project is consistent with the policies and provisions of the City of Dana Point General Plan, the Dana Point Zoning Code, and the local coastal program. All justifications can be made supporting the requested discretionary actions, and therefore staff recommends the Planning Commission adopt the attached draft resolution approving CDP 19-0014 and STP 19-0023 minor, subject to the findings and conditions of approval contained therein. That concludes my presentation. Myself and the applicant are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Giamatti. Do we have any questions for staff from my fellow commissioners? Vice Chair Donor?
The first question is the foundation of the pool the same as the house?
The building pad has a separate foundation than the house.
Okay. And the,
I'm sorry, then the pool and spa.
the subsurface drainage system with a sump pump, that's still required even though you've raised the site with the 30 inches of fill, up to 30 inches of fill?
Correct. This subsurface drainage and the surface drainage that's located beyond where the building pad is located and within the bluff edge setback and on the bluff face, that drainage is going to be redirected through this contouring and a series of drains to a sump pump, which will then pump that water back up to this, or that runoff back up to the street, drainage back up to the street. The building pad itself is utilizing the 30 inches of fill credit in order to create the minimum pitch required on the subsurface drains to drain towards the street for the building pad itself.
Thank you, Dan.
Commissioner Gabbard?
I'd like to focus on the recontouring, and especially as it relates to findings 4 and 5 of the data point, the coastal, or I'm sorry, the coastal development permit. So can the applicant explain exactly how we're going to recontour these bluffs so that without creating significant impacts to the natural landforms or any undue risk to the geological erosional forces?
Michael, would you like to come up?
Sir, if you may go back to the microphone. Thank you.
Hi, is this on? Okay. Currently, it was kind of hard to see in the documentation of the as-built photos, but currently there's a basement there with a paved area that comes down right in that red area. And so the idea is basically, these new contours don't exist currently because there's a squared off basement area from the existing house. And so the idea is to use these contours from the geotechnical engineer, which basically extrapolated the contours from one side to the others and then infill them back to the natural condition.
So when you take that slab out, are you going to take it out with an excavator, or are they going to just jackhammer it out by hand? And I'm just trying to figure out how much impact there's going to be on that slope, or I should say on that bluff, when they're in the construction phase.
Yeah, I wish we had an overlay of the basement area. It's about halfway into that kind of ravine, but that one showed it, previous one.
Yeah, the prior. There you go.
This one shows. Yeah, so I think it would be, likely just manually jackhammered out because it's kind of logistically difficult to even get like anything back there on the bluff edge. So it'd probably be pretty low impact removal.
Okay, and this is the only area on the bluff edge where there's going to be any recontouring or any other edge, how do I want to say it, edge reconstruction?
Yeah, and the idea is really to return it to its original state.
No, I understand that. I'm just trying to understand the impact.
It's just in that area.
Okay. That's my only question.
Thank you. Commissioner Opal, do you have any questions?
Danny, just please refresh my memory. The requirements for the setback or offset of pool equipment, because this seems to be very close, right on the edge, right at the 8-foot setback, and I wasn't sure if that was outside of the requirement or if it was still kind of close.
Yeah, let me see if I could pull up the site plan again. Which actually, yeah, let's just use this one. So yeah, the pool equipment is actually, it's tucked away. It's kind of hard to see here, but in this alcove. The required setback in the RSF3 zone in this particular area is 8 feet. And then pool equipment itself, as a provision in our zoning code, can be no closer than 5 feet without a entitlement, a minor site development permit. In this case, the pool equipment, it's located in this alcove, and it's within it's more than 5 feet from the property line, so we're good with that. And the condenser equipment, there's going to be condensers on either side of the property, here and over here. It's kind of hard to see, but those will also be located more than 5 feet from the property line.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I think I have a couple real quick questions. Actually, they just all got answered, so I don't have any questions. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open the public. David Daly, please. David Daly first, and followed by Mike Boger Quor, I think. Oh, sorry for getting that wrong.
Is it okay if I take my mask off?
Yes.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to present. I live in the adjacent property at 35501 Camino Capistrano and have lived there for 3 years. We are formally opposing the project, and we are filing a similar objection with the California Coastal Commission, whom we've already contacted. We're going to be hiring a geological expert to inspect our property and the coastal bluff and provide feedback on this proposed development. Our concerns are as follows. Our property has a gully, and if you destabilize adjacent soil, we're concerned that the coastal bluff will become unstable. The impact could be an ecological disaster for the city. A major slide of the bluff would have serious ramifications that the city will be liable for. Irreplaceable damage will be done to adjacent properties, including ours. We oppose the pool and jacuzzi, while the equipment, as asked, is offset. The pool is close to the bluff, closer than the existing pool, and digging a pool and jacuzzi can do nothing but destabilize the cliff. The gully that exists in our property that is within feet of the jacuzzi, we've been told we cannot build anything in that gully because it will destabilize the cliff. In addition, what's not shown here, we had our builder review the plans. There's an overhang that extends from the second floor to within 25 feet of the bluff, when in fact the setback should be 40 feet. The city should seek liability insurance from the homeowners, if you do approve this, to cover any losses based on this proposed project should the bluff crumble as a result of the work that's being done despite your geological survey. Having lived there for 3 years, recognizing the cliff has crumbled on a number of occasions, Coast Highway has been closed, and as a result, the city's been impacted as well as the home dwellers. We remind the city that the property is zoned for a single-family dwelling. However, after our builder inspected the plans, we believe that the site is being built for multi-use. And history has proven that current owners have done just that, having rented the facility as a VRBO on multiple occasions. So we ask the city to examine the plans more closely to ensure it is a single-family dwelling. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Mike Boger Quor. I think it's Boger Quor.
I'll help you out on that. My last name is Bojorquez, Bojorquez. Thank you for letting me speak. So I am connected to this property by way of the real estate agent that sold them the property, and have been kind of watching this entire thing come about. And I'm impressed by how far back the final plan got from the bluff edge. And when we're here discussing the impacts on the coastal bluffs, I think you should view a project like this as a humongous benefit for preserving the coastal bluff, because this one is pulling it back not just to 25 feet as shown in those diagrams. If you actually look at it in the one diagram where you're showing the site plan, that one piece of the existing house, that's just the house. That piece of concrete slab that goes outside of it, that's like another, I think, 18 to 20 more feet beyond where the structure is. So that's all going to be turned back into nature. So you're going to have a net gain of closer to like 45 feet more of coastal bluff edge being restored to its natural pristine state in pulling this thing back. Another thing I wanted to point out, Mr. Giometti was describing the improvements being demolished as 2,600 square feet plus a 2-car garage. But what he didn't mention was there's also a 1,200 square foot guest house on site that is also being demolished. So there's already over 5,000 square feet of improvements on this piece of land right now, including a pool and spa. So there's not really a dramatic change, I believe, in the amount of floor area coverage on this lot. I don't know if Michael Fox can clarify that for us, but I think it's going to be pretty similar to what's already existing on that land, other than the fact that we're pulling it back, or they're pulling it back, you know, in some cases 30, 35 feet back from where it is now. And then with that extra patio below, we're talking like 50 feet back from where it sits today. So that's going to be, in my opinion, a pretty tremendous benefit toward restoring these bluffs. In my book, that's I think what you guys are all looking for when trying to protect the coastal bluffs. So that's just my 2 cents, and thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers? Nope. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing, bring it back to the Planning Commission for discussion. Any follow-up questions that they may have? I do have a couple quick questions here. Danny, maybe you can help me out here. I know we have a geological report, and can you help me understand the process internally? Because we don't review those as planning commissioners. They're highly technical. A lot of engineering discussion there. So what's the process of reviewing that internally to make sure that whatever's being, approved and ultimately built doesn't create, some of the things we've heard about tonight?
Right. We have an in-house geotechnical professional that reviews all geotechnical reports along with the building plans and the grading plans. Usually that's a pretty invasive or intensive process. It goes back and forth. A recommendation is made from a geotechnical engineer based on the site stability or future erosional forces and other limiting factors. And then our geotechnical engineer he'll review the report, and then he'll make a recommendation back. He can disagree, he can agree, but this is reviewed intensively between our staff, our engineering staff, along with the planning staff as well, making sure that it meets our LCP, our local coastal program, prior to concurring or agreeing on that geotechnical report. This particular project had a separate geotechnical review prior to the submittal of the coastal development permit as well. With that, we're simply looking at where the location of that setback can be. As was stated earlier, this area through a bluff study was set at a 40-foot setback from the top of bluff, but our local coastal program also allows for deviation from that 40 feet, and that's a ministerial deviation or through the entitlement process. Not ministerial, to deviate based on the recommendations from both the geotechnical engineer, the applicant's geotechnical engineer, and the in-house geotechnical engineer to agree on a safe bluff edge setback, no closer than 25 feet from the bluff edge.
Okay, so just so I understand, we have a 40-foot that's subject to, you can modify that 40-foot to 25 feet, but it has to be or less than 25 feet, but it has to be justified through a geotechnical analysis that shows that it's stable, it's safe.
Correct.
And appropriate.
Future erosional forces, that type of stuff.
Okay, and is that, I know we've seen that, I can't think of the last time we saw a project that was 40 feet back. Almost everything we see comes in with a 25-foot.
That or close
adjustment.
to, in the recent past, we've seen some that are like 27, but the deviation is typically justified if it can be.
Okay. And as it relates to the pool and the jacuzzi, if they're behind that setback, is there, I mean, what are the rules relative to pools and spas? I mean, they're not subjective. I would assume they're fairly objective, and if they meet the objective requirements, they're allowed to be approved.
Yeah, pools and spas have general provisions. Obviously, we talked about the equipment being 5 feet from the property line. The water's edge can be no closer than 3 feet from the property line. In these particular cases, though, where you have the deviation or the bluff edge setback, they have to be landward of that bluff edge setback, which in this case it is. So there's no setback. There's no additional setback from that 25-foot deviation.
Okay, so if I own this house, let's say, assuming we had a time machine, and tonight we approved a project. It didn't have a pool, didn't have a spa, but everything else was the exact same. What would be the process to install that pool if I wanted to down the road as the owner of the property? Would it be staff level, ministerial, permitting, or would you have to come back to Planning Commission?
Any development on a coastal bluff or adjacent to and within the coastal appeals jurisdiction, this is considered development, which requires a permit. Requires a coastal development permit, so you'd have to come back to Planning Commission for that approval.
So you get just a basic CDP?
Coastal development permit,
Okay.
and with that, we would require that it be set back beyond the deviation, just like it's shown here.
Okay, perfect. And then lastly, I know we don't look at this, and I don't know if engineering staff is here, but my assumption is that if there's going to be any type of demolition that has the possibility of destabilizing any type of a slope, that there would be a shoring plan that would have to go through some type of a review.
Correct, yeah, and there'll be an intensive review, obviously during the initial stages of the grading and building plan check review, following all the conditions that are provided in here as well, and then during the construction process. So yes.
Okay.
Chair Nelson, we do have two members of the engineering department here tonight, Brandy Boca and Matt Conk. Guys, there you are. So if you have any specific questions related to the grading, I'm sure they would be happy to respond.
Yeah, I feel fine with the answers that Mr. J. Matty's provided for me. So I have no further questions, and we'll open up to my fellow commissioners for discussion.
I would like to talk a little bit about the grading. When you said that there's going to be a stabilization analysis done prior to the start of grading, is that for the entire bluff edge, or is that just the portion that is getting that's being recontoured?
The stabilization process, I believe that would be Brandy. You jump in, correct me. But the review would be for the entire affected lot. So there'd be a separate process for the recontouring. But this particular where the building pad is located and any improvements within the bluff edge, that'll all be part of a separate review by the Public Works and Engineering Department.
Okay. Yeah. Good evening. My name is Brandy Boca, and I'm the geotechnical reviewer with Public Works. In answer to the stability questions, the applicant has submitted a number of geotechnical reports. In those reports, there was slope stability analysis performed to determine the superficial, gross, and seismic stability of the bluff. And so they have opined that the bluff has a factor of safety that exceeds the numbers in our design the grading manual, so that the bluff is stable as it sits. So that assessment is really what they've provided here. The grading that we're talking about to replace the excavation necessary when they remove the basement is set back about 40 feet from the real grade break in the bluff, which the basement was constructed in a reentrant drainage. So if you walk 40 feet closer towards the beach, then there's a dramatic drop off in the relic sea cliff there. So it appears that this grading that we're talking about here to create this 10-foot high 2-to-1 slope, I think is relatively, the impact on the overall bluff, I would say, would be low.
Do you see this being recompacted by hand? Are they going to?
Probably not. I mean, they need some mechanical compaction here in order to achieve the minimum standards. It's going to have to be 90% relative compaction, and so to do that, they're going to need some equipment.
And you don't think that running that equipment over that edge of the bluff is going to create any problems?
I mean, clearly we'd have to see what they brought out there, but I think it's set back far enough that I wouldn't expect that to happen.
Okay. And on, what would it be? I'm looking for a north-south. On the lower half of the project, or the bottom of the project here where it goes into the adjacent neighbors.
Right.
That whole slope section, there's going to be an analysis that says when they do the over-X for the pad, they're going to look at that slope and make sure that nothing's going to happen as they do the over-X and bring equipment in and out of there.
Let's see. Well, the entire site has been analyzed to date in terms of stability.
Okay.
From PL to PL. Getting into the specifics of the equipment, they are not anticipating grading within 25 feet from the bluff edge, which is typically a significant distance back enough where you're not really impacting the bluff face. I mean, I think we're talking about conventional equipment that's typically used on a single-family residence and not, like a D10 dozer or something like that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff or further discussion amongst the commission?
No, let me think for a second.
You wanna-
I previously asked the staff about the 40-foot normal setback versus the 25-foot deviation. And as a matter of right, the 25-foot setback is allowed if there's sufficient geological surveys completed and certified that it will not cause a problem. So I'm comfortable with that answer.
Great. Commissioner Opal?
So in reviewing this, I see how they have moved the house much further inland, so creating a much stabler bluff. So I appreciate the efforts to rebuild and return the area to the pre-developed. I do have a few concerns about, reestablishing the vegetation without irrigation. There's going to need to be something to be able to do that. But overall, great design, great facility. Appreciate that they've really taken the efforts to bring the footprint of everything within, the 20-foot bluff line or 25-foot line, and will be supportive of the project.
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm going to support the project as well. One of the reasons why we looked at the geotechnical report was the remedial grading lines weren't shown on any of the plans, and I just wanted to make sure that as we got into the over-X of this thing, that we weren't going to impact the bluff more than the areas outlined. So the remediation is keeping with the findings. I was quite concerned, as you guys can tell, about how much impacts there was going to be on the bluff edge as they go through construction. I agree with Commissioner Opal that the lack of irrigation is concerning, just trying to get that vegetation to grow and keep that slope stable. But with that said, I'll agree with staff that it's going to be very, very difficult to do this without some sort of mechanical compaction. So I think we'll just I'll support the project without requiring any kind of hand contouring, because I just don't see a practical way of getting it done. So I'll support the project as well.
Anything to add? Great. Yeah, I reviewed the plans. I certainly understand the concerns from some of the neighbors, and welcome you to do your own investigation. I feel confident in our staff's their review of the plans of the geotechnical engineering design, and really the next step, which is the more intensive engineering review. The site's zoned properly. There's no habitat. In fact, it's fixing, a landform that has been encroached upon prior to the Coastal Act, and I think that's a good thing. Moving or retreating homes back off the bluff certainly improves the stability, and I'm in full support of that. It fits well into the neighborhood. Frankly, it's a beautiful home, one that I can't wait to see built, and for those reasons, I'm also supportive and look for a motion from somebody. Or I'll go ahead and make the motion that we want to do it, Commissioner Vice
I'll
Chair
move
Donor.
that we approve coastal development permit CDP 190014, authorizing the demolition of an existing single-family dwelling and the construction of a new two-story single-family dwelling with 2 attached garages on a coastal bluff lot with minor site development permit SDP 190023M, requested to measure the building height from not more than 30 inches of fill in order to achieve a positive drainage to the street located at 35491 Camino Capistrano.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a first and a second. Go ahead and vote. All right, that item passes 4-0. Congratulations. Which moves us on to item 3, which is a coastal development permit CDP 20-0018 to reconstruct an existing guardhouse at the Monarch Bay Residential Community Entrance and associated improvements in an adjacent to the community recreation area, along with a minor site development permit SDP 21-0008M to permit freestanding and retaining walls to exceed a maximum height limits located at 32581 Monarch Bay Drive and adjoining parcels. I assume we have a staff report on this.
Yes, Senior Planner Danny Giametti will also provide the staff report.
Good evening again, Commissioners. The second request tonight is a request to permit a coastal development permit for the demolition and reconstruction of the existing guardhouse at the Monarch Bay Residential Community Entrance. And there's also associated improvements to the adjacent community recreation area. The project also includes a site development permit, a minor site development permit request to permit various freestanding and retaining walls exceeding maximum height limits when located within required yard areas or visible from the right-of-way. This is the location. The project consists of 3 different parcels that are outlined in green here. The larger recreation square parcel on this side here is located. That is zoned as REC Rec, and then the smaller parcels located along Monarch Bay Drive here at the entrance are designated RSF4, Residential Single Family 4. As you can see, this site is located at the intersection of PCH and Crown Valley, and it's surrounded by a mixture of single-family homes in Monarch Bay itself, and then across the street on Monarch Bay Terrace. So these are the existing conditions on site of the rec center and the guardhouse. We did do some research, and records indicated that there was an approved use variance back in 1962 that permitted the establishment of the community recreation area. Also included facilities for the R1 single-family residence district, and it also included 8 off-street parking stalls that can be used for the rec center, all to be used and maintained by the Monarch Bay Association. The pavilion structure shown here on the top right and the facilities that are attached to it was built in 1963. That includes restrooms and a storage area as part of the structure. And there's also records that we have of street improvements, which included the original guardhouse and the entry islands and all associated hardscape improvements. This is an aerial of the site, obviously the rec site here, and then the guardhouse, the parking spots here. Obviously, this is the existing guardhouse, and then this is the tennis court, which has recently, the tennis court flooring itself has been renovated. Over the years, the subject parcels have received general maintenance and upkeep, as we've seen here, as well as landscape improvements. There's also the existing dog run back on this side here, turfed areas with, I believe this is a mini golf course, and then a playground, and then a grass area. So the proposed scope of the renovation is the demolition and reconstruction of the existing guardhouse, as well as improvements to this adjacent community rec area, obviously shown in green, the guardhouse shown in red, the new guardhouse. Additionally, a request to permit multiple freestanding and retaining walls exceeding maximum height limits when located in required setbacks and visible from the right-of-way is also included in the scope. Those walls will be located, the retaining walls will be located in this planter and walkway area here. And throughout the site, there'll be various retaining walls. And then the freestanding site wall, which will be located in the front here. And that one will be exceeding 42 inches. The site's located within the appeals jurisdiction of the coastal zone, and the project is requesting, and because the project's requesting the various freestanding and retaining walls, a CDP and a site development permit, a minor site development permit are both required. So the construction of the new guardhouse and walls and the remodel of structures, hardscaping and landscaping, they're all considered coastal development per the definition section of the zoning code. Because of that, coastal development permit is required for the proposed development. As I said in the last slide, not only because it's located in the coastal overlay district shown in with the blue line here, but also within the appealable area of the coastal zone, which requires the CDP. So this is the rendering or the proposal for the new guardhouse. Obviously the rendering here, and then the updated site plan with an overlaid floor plan here. The existing guardhouse is approximately 90 feet from the entrance of the community, and the proposed guardhouse will be 205 square feet, replacing the 149 square foot existing guardhouse, and that'll be located approximately 30 feet back from the existing guardhouse location. So it is set back significantly from where the original guardhouse was, and you'll see that in the other slides that the existing guardhouse was further up here. The result will expand and reconfigure the existing entry lane utilized for the residents and emergency responders. And the proposed height of 20 feet, 10.5 inches is allowable because the maximum building height of 24 feet for 0 to 312 pitch structures in the code allows for a maximum of 24 feet. And there's also a vehicle porte cochere that's projecting off the right side as you enter Monarch Bay, and there's a visitor entry lane as well. So as you can see, this is the porte cochere, this is the pass-through lane, and then this is the visitor entry lane. So this is the guardhouse as seen from the front entrance. As you can see, there's renovated hardscaping and landscaping, all part of this project and the previous entitlement that was approved. The finished materials of the guardhouse include a natural stone veneer walls, shown here, dark bronze standing seam roof, metal roofing material. There's also a metal fascia and rain gutters that are proposed, and treated wood slat soffit, shown here. That'll be on the underside of the roof. And then all the window openings will have bronze framing. So these are the associated improvements that are proposed for the recreation area. Obviously, there's a reconfigure of some of the areas, and some of them are remaining in the same location. As you can see, the turf or grass area is remaining in that same general location. What they're doing is they're updating structures throughout the site, these pavilion structures. This is the proposed rendering of the pavilion, and this is the location. And the facilities, the restrooms, and everything attached to them will be renovated as well. They're also updating and renovating the playground, which will be located here. And the sport courts will all be renovated as well. You have your tennis, and then some of the other sport courts here. And then the turf new turf will be applied, or artificial turf will be applied for the dog run, as well as the larger landscape area here. And then obviously there's some various landscape and hardscape improvements and retaining walls that are going to be used for planters and walkways. So the site development permit requirement is, as I said earlier, is required for freestanding walls which exceed 42 inches in height, and they're located within the front yard setback of the site. And then retaining walls which are over 30 inches in height and are within setback areas or visible from either the private or public right-of-way. The project proposes various freestanding retaining walls that exceed the maximum height limits, and under the Dana Point Zoning Code section for this particular provision, it calls out for a site development permit, and specific conditions can be placed on the property or on the walls for that. So this is the legend showing the walls that are proposed on site, or the wall schedule. I'm sorry. As I said, the freestanding wall, meaning non-retaining, that'll be located along the front of the entrance here. This is Pacific Coast Highway here, and obviously the Crown Valley intersection. This proposed front wall will be a CMU, concrete masonry unit wall. As I said, it commences on the northern side of the entrance, and then it follows PCH linearly, 165 feet. This wall is going to match the previously approved, or recently approved coastal development permit that was seen at Planning Commission, CDP 20-0012, STP 20-0015, and that was for the wall that runs parallel to PCH on the southern side. And if you've been out to the site, it looks like it was constructed, and they still have to do landscaping and stuff, but this is the second phase. There'll be several stone-clad finished retaining walls as well, and those are proposed on the interior of the site here. They range from 30 to 42 inches in height, and they form planter areas and walkways, and they're proposed to be finished with, as I said, a stone-clad veneer to match the guardhouse that you saw on the previous slide on the rendering. With all that being said, staff finds the proposed project is consistent with the policies and provisions of the City of Dana Point General Plan, the zoning code, and the relevant portions comprising of the LCP. And since justifications can be made supporting the requested discretionary action, staff recommends the Planning Commission adopt the attached draft resolution approving CDP 20-0018 and SDP 21-0008 minor, subject to the findings and conditions of approval contained therein. That concludes my presentation. I'm available, as well as the applicant, to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Danny. Any questions for staff? Vice Chair Donor?
Was that approved by the Monarch Bay community?
Correct. The Homeowners Association is the applicant, and they are also the approving body.
And there's a water element now in front of the guardhouse?
Yeah, there's a water entry feature, a fountain located at the front of the guardhouse, as well as obviously the other hardscape improvements that are proposed.
And there's restroom inside?
Yeah, the facility is located within the pavilion, the covered pavilion area.
So they don't have to go use the recreation area facilities?
Correct. Yeah, everything is on site. In the guardhouse, obviously, it has a restroom as well. This is the facility here, be located in here, and then there, like I said, there's an existing pavilion there. Oops, there's the existing bathroom.
Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Gabbard.
Yeah, just a quick one. The landscaping buffer on the PCH, is there somebody from Summers and Murphy that's here?
There is. Michael is here.
Hi, Mike. Nice to see you.
Hi, Mike Mann with Summers Murphy and Partners.
So can you kind of define or describe what the landscape buffer is going to look like between edge of curb and the split face wall?
Yeah, the wall that's currently going in south of the entry is a 7-foot 6-inch high split face block wall. And the wall that's proposed on the north side, which is in the green area here, will be 165 lineal feet of the same wall. So it'll match the south side, which was approved and currently being installed.
Right.
And in front of that, we'll have a line of, much like the south side, a lineal green hedge of Carolina cherries, which get about 8 feet, and that'll be solid along the wall. And in front of that, but behind the right-of-way, will be a line of ficus trees, which will match some of the ficus trees at the entry as well. And then the planting below that, much like proposed for the south side, is all drought-tolerant planting that we were asked to match the medians on Crown Valley. So that will be mostly agaves and aloes, okay. And it'll match the south side as well.
And that was really my question. I wanted to make sure that the north and the south side landscape buffers were going to be similar in plant palette. So that's the case.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Do we have any speakers tonight?
No, Chair Nelson.
Okay, great. So I'll open and then close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission for a discussion and a motion. So I'll go ahead and start off. I think it looks great. Honestly, the existing guard shack looks like a guard shack, maybe a guard shack to a prison. And I don't mean that in a negative light, but it certainly looks like a guard shack. And I think this is a really nice improvement. The idea that all the improvements on site are going to be consistent with the landscaping that we have on PCHs is just another added benefit. The upgrade to the walls, the amenities, I mean, all this just seems like a really appropriate improvement. And then, to sort of put the icing on the cake, the additional queuing, based on my math, it's 2 or 3 additional cars. And in the morning, if you go through that intersection, that can be a pretty a busy little place. So I'm in full support of this, and I really like to see what has been proposed. Looks great. Anybody else?
Yeah, as your neighbor, I'm supportive as well. I think that while I'm not a big fan of the split face block, it feels like it's 2005 all over again. It matches what's going on the south side, so we need to continue it. I agree with the chair that any additional stacking that we can put and get off the PCH, we're going to be better off. It's a nightmare to get through that intersection at 7:30 in the morning. So I appreciate the association's willingness to move it back. The rest of the program looks great to me. I look forward to seeing it built. Thank you.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Coastal Development Permit CDP 20-0018 to reconstruct an existing guardhouse at the Monarch Bay Residential Community entrance and associated improvements in and adjacent to the community recreation area, and minor site development permit SDP 21-008M to permit freestanding and retaining walls to exceed the maximum height limits located at 32851 Monarch Bay Drive and adjoining parcels.
I second.
We have a first and a second. Let's go ahead and vote. All right, that item passes 4-0. Congratulations. Which moves us on to our next item, which is old business, short-term rental subcommittee update. Do we have any update tonight?
The City Council reviewed the Planning Commission's recommendation to update the business regulations at their last meeting. And following receipt of public comments and discussion, they provided staff some recommended changes to the ordinance and directed us to come back to their next meeting. So we anticipate the first reading occurring at the next meeting. Some of the changes that were being made was to trying to clarify some sections. Also, as you might recall, the 20-minute response time they felt was a little maybe unrealistic considering summertime traffic and just times to get to a facility. So we anticipate that being considered next Tuesday. The subcommittee also met last Wednesday, and we're just trying to get our minds around phase 2 to try to figure out how to best efficiently pursue development of the pilot program. So both subcommittee members are here if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I did attend the city council meeting on behalf of the subcommittee just to answer any questions. It was a good discussion by the city council, and I think I'll agree with your summation of the what they're doing, and look forward to the next phase. I think this next phase for us will be a challenging one. We've got a lot of interested parties who have varying opinions, and so as we try to forecast and come up with a plan that can achieve broad support across the city, I think that'll be a task that won't be an easy one, but I look forward to working with Vice Chair Donor and with staff, and yeah, so we'll see. Anything else?
Yeah, I was very pleased that Eric represented us at the meeting because I was able to watch the meeting the next day in my pajamas. So I also think it's really something that was announced this time is we have one set of regulations for all residential housing in our city. And the coastal commission area the coastal section of our city doesn't have a separate type of zoning. So whatever we adopt, we have to adopt for the entire period. And I think for the first time, I heard someone say, we are going to have short-term rentals because it's going to be required. And I think that needs to be reiterated because so far of all the hearings that we've had, we have people that are saying we don't want any, we don't want to have any, and I think that's not one of the options. So it'll be interesting to see how we go forward from here. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, that moves us on to new business, item 5, which is our Dohini Village Zoning District Update and Draft EIR Community Workshop. And I assume we have a staff report for this.
We do. Belinda Dinas is here this evening, as well as we have our consultant staff. So this is just an overview of the EIR, not just, but it is. No special actions being asked of the Planning Commission tonight. This is for the benefit of the Planning Commission to learn about the details of EIR before it's brought back to you for formal certification, and also for the benefit of the public.
Thank you, Brenda. Good evening, Chair Nelson and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Belinda Dinas, Principal Planner, and I'm pleased to introduce to you to Mr. Eddie Torres from Michael Baker International, who is our consultant and lead project manager for the preparation of the environmental impact report for the Dohini Village Zoning Code update. Together, Eddie and I will provide some background information and project information on the environmental review process for this evening's community workshop. And I'll turn it over to Eddie.
Great, thank you, Belinda. Good evening, members of the Commission. Eddie Torres of Michael Baker International. We've been working with the city on this project since the early days of the Roma plan, and since that point, put the brakes on a couple of times to involve the community with different aspects of the project and to tailor it to the community. Today, we're going to provide an overview of the project, which Belinda will take on, and I'll provide an overview of the EIR, the summary of the findings, an overview of the mitigation measures, the overview of the public input, and the next steps. So, as I'm sure you're familiar with, that's the outline of the project area, Dohini Village, and we took a comprehensive look at the project area and the surrounding environments. And I'll let Belinda give a brief overview of the project, which I'm sure you're pretty familiar with.
So at our last Planning Commission meeting on April 26th, the Commission reviewed the most recent zoning code draft. So the purpose of the update is to legalize existing uses and patterns of development in order to allow rehabilitation and repurposing of existing structures, as well as opportunities for new improvements over time. The zoning code update is a rezoning effort to establish a new chapter in the zoning code called the Dohini Village Districts, with development standards and land uses specific to the village. This is the proposed zoning map. In purple is the village commercial industrial, which would allow mixed use, light industrial, and commercial uses, where light industrial uses had existed but have not been allowed since the adoption of the Dana Point zoning code more than 30 years ago, and are some of the city's longest standing businesses. In red is the village main street, where properties that front Dohini Park Road. There are some existing properties with residential on upper floors that are currently not permitted. And so the intent is to allow mixed use rather than the existing zoning standards for big box retail, which is challenging for small lots that exist today. In brown is village commercial residential, which would allow horizontal mixed use, meaning that there could be commercial or residential uses allowed within this area. Currently, there are residential uses that are only allowed as accessory to primary uses or primary to commercial or vertical mixed use. So existing residential properties wanting to improve and expand are limited because of their non-conforming status. At present, there are no changes proposed to the community facilities and recreation zoning districts. However, the city does recognize that a separate specific plan has been initiated at the bus yard site. These are the proposed land use designations, identifying the proposed density and floor area for each of the areas specified.
So as part of the project, the required entitlements would be the zoning code amendment, the general plan amendment, the LCPA, and the certification of the program EIR. Next slide, please. So purpose of CEQA, really the purpose of CEQA is to look at the baseline environment of what's out there right now, look at what the potential change in environmental impacts is, and avoid or minimize any potential impacts as possible with mitigation measures, and really provide the public with a tool to review the project and provide comment throughout the process. And as we've been involved with this project for a number of years, there's been a large opportunity for the public to provide comment into the project and for us to incorporate the commentary into the design of the project itself. The other thing too is, as this project is being used as a long-term plan for Dohini Village, we set up the EIR to be programmatic in nature to look at the overall bigger level impacts to make the document a living document for the city to tear off of in the future for future development that happens within Dohini Village. And as we see on the next slide, we've gone through a number of steps in the process. We had the initial study notice of preparation, which was the broad overview of the project and description of the project, and provided the public the input to take a look at what we're proposing, provide commentary. We received comments on that and did incorporate those comments into the environmental impact analysis. As you can see, there's numerous steps in the process for the public to provide input. So we took that initial study, looked at the commentary provided, tailored the analyses and technical studies, incorporated that, and provided the draft EIR, which is out for public review. It started a couple of weeks ago and goes through June 9th. And even though there's going to be questions and comments on the project, we prefer everything to be in written, sent to Belinda. We want to make sure we address all the comments fully in writing with the final EIR. The next step, as I said, is response to comments, which goes into the final EIR. That comes back to the Planning Commission and City Council, and ultimately the Coastal Commission. And then the findings and resolution are adopted, and the project is, if it all goes well, approved. So we looked at, as CEQA requires, there's called the Appendix G Checklist, which is a number of environmental topical areas, ranging from aesthetics to geotechnical, to hydrology, air quality, noise, land use, public services. And we took a comprehensive look in all of those. This is the EIR, double-sided, very comprehensive. The appendices are about this tall. This is basically a summary of all the studies we've done. We've done detailed technical studies of geotechnical, hydrology, water quality, air quality, noise, greenhouse gases, land use planning, aesthetics, tribal culture resources, the consultation with that. And this is the compendium of all that's happened. So as far as that goes, it's a very comprehensive document that looked at the project, and as the time has gone by, we've tried to minimize and avoid as many impacts as possible. And I'll go into this in a little bit, but all of the impacts that are in the EIR have been determined to be no impact, less than significant, or less than significant with mitigation. There are no unavoidable impacts, and most of the mitigation measures deal with ways to avoid or minimize construction impacts with the project, such as air quality emissions or hydrology, water quality issues, or geotechnical issues. As you've seen, those are conditions that the city wants to deal with. And we've dealt with the tribal and consultation process and incorporated their feedback into it too, comments from Caltrans, comments from other agencies involved too. So with that, we feel that the project going forward provides the city a great roadmap. Like I said, most of the mitigation measures are for short-term impacts. The one that deals with potential long-term impacts are vehicle miles traveled, which is a new topic dealt with right now with CEQA, with Senate Bill 743. And we've done the analysis with the city's traffic engineer, Lynn Scott Law and Greenspan, to provide a menu approach for residential and non-residential projects that provides the city flexibility and the residences and businesses in Dohini Village to provide the menu option to create the flexibility that will reduce vehicle miles traveled.
And so the public draft EIR is available for viewing here at City Hall in the Community Development Department. A hard copy of the draft document and the technical reports in the appendices are at the front counter. The last of three in the series of virtual office hours will be held this Wednesday on May 12th from 5 to 6 p.m. This meeting will feature a 10-minute presentation on the proposed public improvements of the Dohini Village Plan, and the remainder of the hour will allow for open questions and answers and feedback from the public. The meeting link can be found on the project webpage. Lastly, the city will be hosting a pop-up community workshop on Saturday, June 5th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. City staff will be available at outdoor booths with information on the Dohini Village Plan, as well as other planning efforts such as the housing and public safety element, short-term rentals, and more. The event will take place at the public parking lot next to El Patio Cafe at the corner of Dohini Park Road and Domingo Avenue. Visitors are encouraged to take the trolley to Dohini Village, and the trolley stops right across the street on Domingo. It should be noted that the date identified on the staff report on page 4 in the chart should be noted as June 5th, not June 6th.
So here's a schedule we have. Right now, we're in the public review period that ends June 9th, and Planning Commission and City Council are headed towards the summer. That is flexible based upon how many public comments we get. We may get very few, may get plenty, but we're going to make sure we address all those comments in writing and provide that within the final EIR and going to the Coastal Commission in fall. And I wanted to reiterate our process with conducting the analyses. So, like I said, CEQA is based upon the existing environment, what the potential impact is of the proposed development, and how to minimize that. So there were numerous studies involved. We went out to Dohini Village and took a number of noise measurements, extensive photographic inventory. We went out and did traffic counts at numerous intersections, and that is fairly conservative because this was done pre-COVID when traffic patterns and everything else was at the normal level. Unsure how that may happen, post-COVID, but that's provided a conservative estimate of the potential impacts. Geotechnical analyses, percolation studies, hydrology and runoff studies, and archaeological reconnaissance survey, paleontological studies. So the full gamut of the environmental resource areas were conducted, and to provide the city with a good baseline of what the Dohini Village area is comprised of.
So city staff did receive some public comments via emails late today, around 4 o'clock this afternoon, and so copies of those emails have been distributed to the planning commissioners. And please send written comments. The public's welcome to contact me directly, either via email or send here to City Hall. And that public comment period does close June 9th at the end of business at 5 o'clock p.m. With that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission receive public comments and provide feedback on the Dohini Village Zoning Code Update Draft EIR. And Eddie and I are available to, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Belinda and Mr. Torres, any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Opal.
Belinda, I believe you said you had the office hours, like 3 of them total. So what was the participation from the public at the first 2 that you've held?
Sure. So the first one was actually very successful. We had maybe about, I want to say 16 or 18 or so on the call in that short hour. And so I'm actually working with Allison to post that on our YouTube playlist for Dohini Village so that you can take a look at that. The first conversation was on recent changes to the code that had been presented to the Planning Commission. So many of the working group members were there to help facilitate that as well. The second one, which was last week, it was less attended. There were only 3 of us there, but we had a great discussion as well. So this, as I mentioned, this week on Wednesday, we will cover the capital improvement plan and future public improvements in the village.
Commissioner Gabbard?
Could you spend a couple minutes talking about the differences between a program level EIR and a project level EIR, just for education of anybody that may be watching this in the future, so they understand that there's a difference in mitigation?
No problem. Yeah, the difference, CEQA allows different levels of an environmental impact report. And typically for a larger plan document like this, we look at it programmatically because we know of the overall development area and potential development impacts from a higher level overview. We don't know of the specific development of somebody on parcel B if they're going to build up to 2,000 square feet or so. So we try to provide it at that higher level. That way, when subsequent development comes through, we've looked at the worst case and we've mitigated it so that way they don't have to go do additional environmental review. And so a project level is if you have potentially, the hotel down at the harbor, where you know what's going to happen there, and the specific development potential, the traffic ingress, egress, the square footage, and so on, so you can mitigate it specifically towards that. That's the project, but we look at this as the overall macro level and make it a useful tool for subsequent development coming through the road.
So it's really the project level where you get into things like whether we're going to have a right turn lane, or we're going to increase our sewer line, or we've got to increase water capacity.
Right, and we looked at utilities and public services. We worked with the city's public works department closely to look at the capacity of the water lines, the sewer lines. We did a water supply assessment with the South Coast Water District. But for instance, a project level EIR may look at the project and say, we're going to be grading 3,000 cubic yards of dirt. We're going to be having 2 dozers and a tractor, and here we're going to have this sound wall right here. And it's really down to the very minute level of detail, where this one, we kind of look at it conservatively to make sure that coming down the road, if you fall within the envelope of what we looked at, the subsequent review and environmental analysis is minimized, and that provides a benefit to the community and to the developers who are going to be building down in Dohini Village.
Thank you.
Commissioner Donor, Vice Chair Donor.
When you're dealing, you said you're going to respond to everybody in writing. So when the Historical Society says we don't think you should do anything on the Coast Highway, is that something you've already studied, or is that something to be amended?
In the analysis, we conducted a archaeological, paleontological, and historical resources inventory and analysis. We didn't really get any comments related to historic resources during the NOP comment period. And so we would take a look at that, see what valid concerns are there, see if it poses an environmental topical area. Numerous times, the comments that come into a project do not deal with environmental resource areas, so we'll take a look at that and respond as we can, but we're really looking at responding to the environmental issues and seeing if our analysis and mitigation does go through it. But like I said, we've been involved with the project for a number of years and dealt with the community and the stakeholders, so I think we're in a pretty good place with this.
You have a couple quick ones here. I think one thing I want to make sure that we're super clear on, and I think it's an important element, is that in order for you to do anything, you need the comments in writing, that it's critical that, public testimony, as important as that is, in response to the EIR, you need to have those comments written, directed either to staff or to yourself, so that you have something to actually respond to. Is that correct?
In meetings like this, we take great notes, but it's great to have it in a written fashion. So what we do in the final EIR is, the final EIR is composed of the draft EIR, and then we take all the comment letters and then bracket them, and then respond to each individual comment in writing. And if we have any kind of changes with the analysis or recommendations, we provide what's called an errata, double strike through underline to clarify the text. And then we provide the mitigation monitoring program, so that way when development does occur, the city has a checklist of, okay, here's our topical area, here's our mitigation, here's how it's applied. And it's a checklist that makes it easy for staff, uses, and resources to track. But yes, it is appreciated to get the comments in writing.
Okay, great. And you talked on the type of EIR, so that's good information. The one question I had was, when you do your analysis for the program level EIR, what's your build-out assumption? Is it full? You make an assumption, I think you use the word worst case, that every site is developed out at its full capacity within the zoning? Is that normal?
Yeah, we took a look at that and worked extensively with city staff on developing a build-out list. And we looked at the build-out plus also cumulative conditions. So we have what's called a cumulative project list. So we look at the project impacts of the project itself, plus also the combination of all other development that's in the geographic area. And with that, we looked at the projects that the city staff forecasted in Dana Point. We looked at consulted with surrounding cities too, San Juan Capistrano and all those surrounding neighborhoods, and developed an extensive list. Our cumulative project list, I think, is about 31 projects. So it is looking at the full build-out of the area.
Okay. I know I did have a couple other quick questions here. I think one of the things that is always curious to me, and the lack of attendance tonight maybe speaks to it, is, are there any major outstanding areas of controversy at this point with the plan that you could speak to?
Not that we've seen so far. So far, we've received predominantly positive feedback and support for the project.
Great. And then as it relates to the letters that we got tonight, I know that I'm sure that these will be addressed as part of the response to comments, or would they? Because some of them don't seem to be CEQA related. They're more zoning code related.
City staff will take a look at the comments and evaluate whether modifications are needed for the zoning code update.
Okay, perfect. All right, I think that's it for me. I have no more questions or comments. So with that, I think it's just a file, receive and file. Any other comments or questions from? Great. With that, thank you very much for your time tonight and staff report. And that moves us on to, I think, the end. But let me make sure here. Yep, that is it. Unless we have any, do we have any staff reports?
Nothing tonight, thank
Great.
you.
Commissioner comments? Nothing? All right.